Hello, this is Will Faerber from Art to Ride, and today we're calling this one the day we've waited 3 years for. This is Bailador, who many of you have been following all this time that we've been training him. He was a very extreme case, basically spent most of his time spooking and shying, though he was a very sweet horse on the ground. So what we basically discovered was that he had a very, very bad back and a very bad break in the neck, and he had learned to become his own worst enemy, and that everything he did to try to get out of being ridden just exacerbated the pain in his back, and he was just caught in this vicious cycle. But I feel like today, for the first time, is the first day he's been able to come up into a working trot, and I've actually been able to put my aids on, that is, put my leg on and move the horse directly forward into the contact. And he's completely relaxed about all of that for the very first time. Once again, I've had him relaxed before, but not necessarily completely in the aids the way he is today, and there's a difference between that. We must start with relaxation, but getting to the point where he is here, where you see how he's come up beautifully, he's not breaking over in the pole, kind of curls a little bit there, and I let go a little bit. How beautifully he's coming forward from behind into the contact. And once again, look how relaxed he looks, how floppy his ears look. He's actually paying attention to me for the first time. I actually felt like for the first ride that he was actually trying to do what I want rather than trying to think of a way of resisting what I wanted, and actually felt like for the first time that he was proud of himself at the end of the ride, if that makes any sense. But I think horses do, and I get a sense of that from them. And today, for the very first time, I got that sense from him, and that's a very exciting place to be. So I'm going to take a moment here and show you how I got to this place with him today. This was a little more towards the end of the ride, so I'm showing you where we ended up. I started out by lunging him a little bit just to warm him up, and then to do a little work in the piaffe, and that's what you're going to see here in a moment. And that was all preliminary to getting on him. But the work in the piaffe has really been the key with this horse, as it was with Perhaps, to bring her into focus. Some of these horses, their minds are just so unfocused, and of course you can't start the piaffe work until they're light in the bridle. But once you have that, if you can then get the piaffe, you can see how the horse will just give itself over to you. So let's watch it how easily he does this now. I've just brought him to the rail. You notice that I often will give a horse a piece of sugar before I ask for the piaffe, because I don't want him dreading coming over to the rail when I'm going to ask him for the piaffe. Watch how easily now he steps up into this. Just to even tap this horse with a whip up until now, you know, was you were very likely to get an explosion. But watch how he comes up underneath himself. You can literally see the back push up, and now as it starts to move forward, as remember, all good piaffe should always have a sense that it wants to move forward. Watch how he comes under himself. Look at the degree of flexion in the hocks. Look how he's pushing up through that lower back. And this is just the beginning of this training. Let's take one more look at that before we move on to the training. So you can really get an eye for this. And notice how relaxed he is. Notice how relaxed he was at the end of this. If your horse is not relaxed in the piaffe, it isn't any good, like everything else. So to get a horse like this who is so nervous through to the other side of that, where he's accepting the encouragement from the whip there a little bit without overreacting and exploding, for this horse is a big deal. And once again, watch how he compresses the hocks there. You can see the back lift up. Look how that lower back comes up and all of a sudden looks really nice and round up through there. That's what we're looking for. Notice how he relaxes into it. Look at how he's not broken at the pole. So that's absolutely fantastic right there. Just what we're looking for. And that's why I'm now getting what I'm now getting in the ring. So after that, I got on him and started to walk. And for the first time, I feel maybe ever, I was able to immediately, you're seeing the whole ride here, I immediately just got on him. I was able to stretch him right to the ground with no problem whatsoever. And notice how relaxed he is. This is a horse who literally every day you got on him would pick a few spots around the ring and just fixate on them. And you would have, and he'd just spook at them violently every time you came by them over and over again. If he heard a little noise somewhere, he would react very violently. So this is the first day. Notice how even in the walk here, I'm able to bring him up into a working walk. And this is very crucial, once again, that I'm able to bring him up without him breaking in the neck. And when horses have been overflexed in the neck, once again, there is nothing you can do but wait for them to heal. Because if you bring them up and they break in the neck again, you're just reestablishing that. So horses that have been broken have to stay in the stretch until that heals. And we're able to bring the pole up as the back develops enough strength. He'll be able to come up like you see him doing here and bring the neck up without changing the walk. Now also, when we started this horse, he was a very lateral walker. He actually did not have a 4-beat or correct walk at all. He basically walked like a camel all the time. And when you get on him, he would just collapse his back out from underneath you and then start camel walking. But look how beautifully he comes, like right there. You see how I put my leg on, he comes forward into the contact with the bridle rather than resisting my legs. And this was the first day I ever felt this horse do this, and especially in a way that as I brought him forward to the aids each time, he would completely relax. It's not that he's absolutely perfect here in this ride, but every time he's not, I'm able to correct him, to make the correct correction, that is, by putting my leg on and sending him forward into the contact again. So here I'm just doing a little bit of a shoulder forward with him, not much, just bending a little bit to the inside, not asking for anything huge. Now notice even up in this position the walk is a little slow, and so what you'll see me doing throughout this is constantly letting him back out again. So I'm trying to get the walk to be as big as it is in the stretch when I bring his pole up. That's always our goal, remember. We don't want to give up movement for position of the frame. Why would we? It's movement that this is all about. Now lovely, comes just back into that stretch. You see how I keep opening it back up. So you have to let horses open and close throughout a ride. You can't just keep a horse in collection. Once again, collection is not just a trick that once the horse learns it can repeat over and over again. Collection is a level of physical development. And like any physical act, your muscles tire and it becomes difficult to keep doing that same thing. And you have to give your muscles a break. Well, the horse is exactly the same thing. Just think of it as one big muscle. So I think of the top line. Yes, it's made up of many different things, but you really don't need to think of it that way. You need to think of it as just one long muscle that has to light up all together, like flexing your bicep from one end to the other. Now this is his left side, which was always a little more difficult. When we first began this horse, if you even put your left leg on him, he would just go completely out of his mind. So it's taken a long, long time just to get him to accept the contact. Very often people would say about a horse like this, oh, he's very forward. The horse isn't forward at all. This horse was just running away. So a horse that runs away is not forward. Forward means that the horse allows you to control and direct his energy into movement. That's what it means to be forward, not just to run straight ahead. So very often people who get thoroughbreds in their hands who don't really understand how to train them, they mistake that desire that they have to run forward with being forward, which is two totally different things. Look how beautifully in 4-beat this walk is here now. Once again, staying up in the working walk, exactly where I want him to be. And if he resists for a moment, I'm able to just add a little leg and put him right back into it again. There. So with each time I let him down in the stretch, I'm able to make my correction once I bring him back up a little more easily. So once again, see how I keep coming back to opening the walk up, because every time I bring him up, it kind of slows the walk again. So if I feel his back beginning to drop, I want to let the horse completely back out in the stretch. And this, once again, was the first day that I've ever ridden this horse that I was able to put my leg on when he started to drop his back and the back came back up. The way it was with this horse for a long, long time is I'd get on, he might feel pretty good, and all the things I would normally do to get the horse back up, it just wouldn't happen, and you just have to get off and start again. So look how beautifully he's able to come up into that working walk, once again, without going into a 2-beat walk. He's able to raise the pole without breaking at the neck, and I'm even asking for a little bit of a half pass. I've tried this a couple of times with this horse before, but because he was just not in the aids enough, it just wasn't quite possible. But look how nicely he responds. I think I've tried this once or twice before, back months ago, but this is the first time he's ever really started to respond to me here, and I'm able to correct the bend. So that was fantastic. For him to stay in the aids like that and allow me to control the bend was literally the first time that's ever happened. So of course, once again, I come right back to that stretch again, reestablish the forward and swinging walk. It's like music, it's like water, it's got to keep flowing. What happens to water when it stops flowing? It becomes stagnant. Well, the same thing is true of horses. When they stop flowing forward, they become very stagnant. And of course, that's what makes riding interesting in a ring to do dressage. It takes so much focus. People will often say, well, don't you get bored doing this? And it takes so much focus and concentration to do what I'm doing here that I'm really barely even aware of the surroundings. And that's what makes dressage very interesting. So for the first time, look once again how beautifully he came up through the pole right there, and I was able to keep that there, and I'm able to go into the half pass to the left. And while he resists a little bit doing this, really not much, and I'm able to maintain the bend and keep it going. So for his second or third try at half pass, that was pretty fantastic. And he was able to stay in the A's, I was able to hold the bend, and once again, what do? I come right back to the stretch once again. Always re-establishing that big swinging motion. All the way back down in the walk once again. And you can see how once in a while how I bring my shoulders up and back. When you see me do that, what I'm doing is actually lightening my seat in the saddle. I'm sending the horse forward a little bit from my leg, which he responds to beautifully, and I lighten my seat by stretching up and closing my upper thigh in the saddle a little bit, which gives the horse some room to come up underneath me. Once again, as soon as the ball forms underneath me, then I can sit straight, as you see me doing here. Lovely transition into the trot there for him. And look how even and straight he is. And of course, that's the other issue, is that for the first time the horse feels straight to me. So of course I let him right back down into a stretch to start off. But for the first time, he's actually responding to the leg instead of running forward. How beautifully stays in that. And just notice how relaxed and floppy this horse's ears stay throughout this entire ride today. And every time he does something a little bit wrong, I just put my leg on. It just pushes him right back up there. I'm able to maintain that position of the pole right there. So for the first day, this horse was actually fun to ride. How beautifully lit up the top line is right there, and how even that stride is. Look at the hind leg coming through. And how he's actually starting to develop some bounce now. So see how the forehand is almost starting to be lifted, and that's exactly, it actually is being lifted. See how even the thrust of the hind leg. So this is the first step of beginning to develop collection. Once you can get the horse developing like this, everything else becomes very easy. Right back down in the stretch, look how deep and swinging the hind legs swing through. But once again, notice that he's lifting himself off the ground. He couldn't track that deep under his body with the hind leg and not forge if he weren't thrusting enough into that round back. And of course, that's what happens with horses that are hollow. If they try to come through, they can't, they start forging. So consequently, they shorten them up even more and just get the front shoulders to throw out. But once again, no matter how high a horse lifts its knees, it's on the forehand if it's not round to the back and thrusting. Remember, collection is the degree to which the horse lifts the whole forehand off the ground, not how high it lifts its legs. Beautifully corrected here. It just enables me. I can put my leg on and bend him to the left now. Once again, when we began with this horse, that was almost an impossibility. Nice lengthening of the strides. I let him back down in the stretch again. Lovely turn into a leg yield. And look how flowing it is. That's what we want it to be. Now I can begin to make some music with this horse because it's flowing and it has rhythm. Remember, really, that's the definition, for instance, of music, is organized sound. So it's first organized into rhythm. The same thing is true of horses. If it has no rhythm, you're not going to play any music. How beautifully swinging this back is, exactly the same rhythm all the time. But once again, look how it's slowed down. If you went back and looked at some earlier videos of this horse, you'd see that he's moving much faster. And now we actually see some thrust off the ground. So we see like a bounce. You can almost see the horse bouncing up into himself, so to speak, as the hind legs track under the body. Remember, thrust is the degree the horse pushes off those hind legs, which pushes up into the back and propels the horse forward. How beautifully stays up there in the pole there. Little lengthening of stride here, and he stays right on the contact. No problem whatsoever. Has a little bobble there in the middle, but I put my leg on, he comes right back into the contact again. Left side is always a little more difficult, so you can see how he kind of wants to start right away bending that neck to the inside. But I immediately give and push him through with my legs, and I'm getting right back and straighten the neck out. Remember, you never want more bend at the base of the neck than you want in the middle of the back. When you see riders twisting horses' necks from side to side, telling you they're suppling the horse, run in the opposite direction, because they're people who don't understand anything about bend. And always remembering that we must have longitudinal bend, that is over the horse's back, before we can get lateral bend. That's why you see this horse now starting to bend, and how easy it was to do the half pass, and how easy it is to come through the turns and corners, because he now can bend. Bend is never anything you have to struggle to get the horse to do. That is lateral bend. Longitudinal bend is what we have to work on. Once we get that, that is the horse lifting its back, it frees those vertebrae and allows the horse to bend, and allows the energy to flow through the horse in the correct manner, as you see it doing with this horse now. All the way down in that stretch, and just even to go right, this doesn't seem like much to most people, but for this horse to go around the ring on a loose rein like this and into the contact and not spook every 10 feet is a huge accomplishment. Now nicely he comes back up again as I shorten my reins. He doesn't freak out. Notice the trot did not change at all through that transition. Good rhythm here once again. Look how nicely he's able to turn and bend through these turns through the serpentine. How easily he changes the bend. And once again, he changes the bend easily because he can change the bend, because his back is up. And once again, this was the first ride I ever had on this horse where if his back started to drop, I could put my legs on and put it back up underneath him again. And that for this horse was an issue of just simply how damaged his back was. It just took a long time to heal. So I'm hoping that this horse is an inspiration to many of you, who have horses with a lot of problems, just to understand that if you keep doing this work, you will get there. If the horse is sound, and very often, they become sound through this work, as this horse was unsound. This horse used to stand, and he couldn't stand on his left leg at all. His left leg would stand and shake, and it moved very strangely when you rode him. But as you can see now, that's absolutely beautiful. And once again, you see there, he got a little bit hollow. I put my leg on, he comes right back into the contact again. But notice how long I've been going here and how this horse has stayed completely focused throughout this entire ride and focused on me. Beautifully back into the stretch again. Once again, no change of rhythm. So once again, this is Will Faerber from Art to Ride. Wanted to share this moment for you. This is the moment we've waited for 3 years with this horse. We totally put it all together. I couldn't be happier. So all of you take heart that have these horses that have been a little damaged in the past. It always takes at least a year with horses that are broken at the third vertebrae to heal that. So know you've got that to go through. But if you keep at it, you will get there. Even the most difficult horses like this can completely turn around if you're willing to take the time in order to get there. And this horse has many, many more years of great riding ahead of him, I'm sure, after this. This is Will Faerber from Art to Ride. Keep up the great work out there. And that was a thumbs up ride. See you next time.